Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our latest InSport education webinar. Thank you very much to everybody for tuning in. And I'm really excited about today's session. I think we're very fortunate to have two fantastic guests discussing what is a really fascinating area of the sports industry. So I'd like to introduce, in no particular order, Julia Palais, Sustainability Director at Formula E. For those of you who have participating in our Foundations of Sport business course, you'll recognise Julia, who delivers the module on sustainability in sport. I'm also very fortunate to have Anne-Cécile Turner, who is the Sustainability Director at the Ocean Race. So both of those organisations built very much with sustainability at the heart of their offering and a fundamental part of their strategy. And I think it's interesting and something we'll come on to, that obviously the Ocean Race is a sailing event where sailing has always been at the forefront of the sustainability conversation. Formula E as a motorsport, perhaps motorsport less involved in that sustainability conversation until this point, where Formula E and Extreme E are perhaps really pushing that agenda and making some really interesting headway. So thank you both for joining us. It's great to have you here, and we'll dive right in with a couple of questions. And perhaps if I can start with you, Anne-Cécile, particularly around the Ocean Race, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about how the event is building sustainability, or has built sustainability into its offering. How much of that is part of the DNA of the event?
So the race has always had some projects around ocean preservation, but in 2016, for the 2017-18 edition, it took a complete new turn, where we really launched a very solid sustainability program. Thanks to our premier partner, 11th Hour Racing, we managed to integrate sustainability in every corner of the organization, partner with UN Environment around their Clean Seas campaign, and really used the race as a force for change to encourage fans, followers, and all our stakeholders to take a step on ocean plastic pollution, which was at the heart of the organization. So it was a long journey, not a subject very well known by all the stakeholders we were talking to, specifically because the Ocean Race, as you mentioned, is around the world sailing race, visiting at the time 12 different countries, 12 different cultures, and the maturity level on the sustainability is completely different from one culture to the other one. So we had to get a sense of adaptation, but it was at the end a very award-winning, successful program, and we were really feeling that we created a big movement of change.
Brilliant, thank you. And Julia, I think Formula E, probably the first major global sporting platform that was sort of built with sustainability right at the very core of the proposition. How has that evolved over the last few rounds of editions of Formula E, and how that has spilled over into Extreme E and even the electric boat racing series that you guys are involved with?
Yeah, so I mean, Formula E is an all-electric racing series. For those that are not familiar with the sport, we race in city centers, and certainly when we created the series, it's not that the world needed another racing series. It's the world needed a platform to advance electrification for kind of like a real uptake in terms of mobility, and making sure that we would contribute to transition to a lower carbon society. And certainly transportation is one of the key contributors in terms of global CO2 emissions. So that's the reason why Formula E was created, and that's why sustainability is so embedded in the DNA of the series, because it was it was us using the excuse and the vehicle, in a way, the pun intended, of the racing to, advance the technology and change the perceptions around the sport. So sustainability has, of course, been always very strongly embedded, but as we are progressing with and growing and changing the maturity of the championship, sustainability is also reflecting that evolution, and we are seeing a more and more holistic approach. And probably what is more important for me, a real switch to a sustainability culture in the championship. We've gone from sustainability strategy to sustainability culture, and I was smiling when Anne-Cécile was saying we've embedded in all the corners of the organization, because this is exactly what we've done also. It's the exact same process, making sure that sustainability is considered by every department, by every stakeholder in everything that we do.
And you raised an interesting point there. Sport, I think, for many years has not really been part of the conversation around broader sustainability piece. I mean, we've all been to huge major events, be that an Olympics, football World Cups, Grand Prix, and the carbon footprint and the impact of those events in terms of transport, waste, electricity, is vast. I mean, you look at the Olympic Games under normal circumstances, how many people travel, the infrastructure that's required. It's an enormous impact that will make. And I think that is now fundamentally changing in people's awareness of sustainability and the climate crisis really increases. But how do you think sport can play a role in providing solutions or ideas that can really start to address the challenges we face in terms of sustainability? Anne-Cécile, if you give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting question, because it's quite topical, with all the governmental announcements around the objectives for reduction. And what we are saying is that, of course, we need to reduce our own impact, and that's what we're doing. Chasing carbon and greenhouse gas emissions across the whole organization, but we want to go further than that. We want to create a net positive impact, and in fact, we can do it. At the Ocean Race, our climate strategy is reduce, advocate, and regenerate. And in fact, I think sometimes that organizations are just too focused on reducing their own carbon impact, and they're getting the immense value that the sports can have is filtering this with a very positive, innovative angle in the eyes and the voice of its ambassadors. So we have launched an initiative to advocate for this topic across all our stakeholders. For example, we're conducting a series of climate change workshops for our sailing teams, so that they understand a bit more what's at stake and feel comfortable to talk about it out loud. We're joining the biggest organizations that are guiding us in reducing the impact, but we also want to, once we've reduced as much as we could, and that's also powering innovative solutions and creating collaboration platforms with the industry to find alternative solutions. And actually, we are working with Julia on one of those around, for example, the look and overlay for sports events. But we want to regenerate, and it's not only about offsetting the remaining amount, but for example, in our space, we are supporting the blue carbon initiatives. We've understood that ocean-related plants such as seagrass or mangrove are 10 times more efficient than trees to sequester carbon. And at the moment, we want to do it ourselves, also encourage all our stakeholders to be able to regenerate these areas, so that we can really create a net positive impact.
Brilliant. That's fascinating to hear. Julia, I think Formula E, with the an electric mobility sort of strategy at the heart, has a significant role to play in raising awareness of that in terms of mobile transport solutions and driving the advance of technology. I mean, effectively, what Formula One used to do for the motor vehicle, Formula E is now doing for the electric vehicle in moving technology forward. But you know, alongside Formula E, where else can sport really help bring solutions to the table for the challenges we face in terms of sustainability and climate?
Well, I think, I mean, if we take a step back and consider that a couple of years ago, United Nations chose 2 sectors to really kind of like be the beacon and the platform of climate change challenges, but also kind of like opportunities, being sports and fashion. You understand that beyond, and very much echoing what Anne-Cécile said, beyond the sport themselves, that's the opportunity to reach the hearts and minds of all the stakeholders, including the fans, because the sports kind of like ecosystem altogether represent billions and billions of people that are inspired by, I mean, what the sport is delivering. And obviously, this kind of like sports for good element is something that is kind of like infusing the fan. People feel compelled by kind of like an athlete, taking example and kind of like wanting to inspire people to do the same and to do the right thing. So I guess that's very much this is the power of sport. Certainly making sure that they walk the talk in their organizations, and very much echoing again what Anne-Cécile was doing. Production is important, but what is much more important, I mean, as important probably, is to make sure that we're using our platforms. And at Formally, what we do is that one of our pillars is called creating value through values. And certainly this is how we are bringing our ecosystem that altogether is literally billions of people in terms of reach, because we take all the automotive car manufacturers, we take all our partners that are big, partners and sponsors that are big companies, Allianz, DHL, Bosch, and so on. And what we want to do is make sure that the sustainability message is being amplified by all this ecosystem, so that we reach ultimately people like you and me that live their daily lives and are able to have a concrete solution for a more sustainable lifestyle.
Thanks. You mentioned briefly before, Anne-Cécile, about different sports collaborating on this challenge, and I think that's a huge opportunity if you bring together the power and the reach and the influence of multiple organisations such as yours and others. And I know there's a number of organisations with which you're involved, the Sport and Sustainability International being one, and there's a number of others. But Anne-Cécile, how do you think that collaboration can work? I mean, how do you feel with sports coming together that they're able to really amplify the effect of the impact they can bring?
Yeah, I think our system has been built and has suffered from a disease, an acute disease, I would say, for a long time, is siloism. And in the transition to the new system, we need to operate a complete paradigm shift in terms of the way we operate, the way we collaborate, the business models we're creating. So for me, collaboration is absolutely key. It's quite essential to the way we're going to build the future. It has to be together. What's at scale is so big that on our own, even if we are one of the biggest sailing events, in the world, it's not going to be enough. So as an example, we've partnered with the World Surf League and joined the campaign that is requesting 30 by 30 to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. We have joined the UNFCCC and their Sports for Climate Action, which is really a super strong collaboration for all the sports entities, big or small, to actually go to COP26 and beyond, really to fulfill all the climate commitments. And there are so many other avenues. We're launching as well, for example, another initiative which is called Sustainable Boat Building Innovation Workshop, and it's a series of industry-led workshops where we're gathering the industry to understand, promote best practice, and understand how we can integrate sustainability further in our own industry by taking the learnings and the knowledge from bigger industries such as airline or automotive industry. And with Julia, we are also together within the Sensi. Maybe Julia, you want to talk about it a bit more, but it's also the idea of the industry joining forces in order to really represent the sport and become an advocacy, and engage our athletes who are the most heard of in the journey as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne-Cécile. I mean, Julia, you're president, I think, of Sport and Sustainability International. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about that organisation and your objectives and aims for that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, both Anne-Cécile and I have been kind of like participating in the kind of like the foundation of Sensi, Sport and Sustainability International, and certainly when we all gathered, we had one feeling that sports and sports globally had this opportunity to make a real positive impact and a contribution. But we felt that we were not probably kind of like connected enough and collaborative enough. Again, echoing very much what Anne-Cécile said, in order to advance sustainability in and through sports. That's really the mission of Sensi. So I mean, we've been lucky enough to gather some sports organization entities, properties, and so on, really from a global standpoint, that do want the same thing. Obviously, they want to understand better how they can improve sustainability of their event, but also how they can leverage their platform and infuse sustainability through the whole value chain, and ultimately in terms of kind of like messaging to their end goal, clients, fans, and so on. So, we have obviously a set of defined priorities, and we work with kind of like verticals on some dedicated projects. We've, defined a project that is called Football for Climate, where obviously kind of like the football ecosystem is gathering around the topic of, measuring their carbon emissions, reducing, and very much how we can utilize athletes to advocate, and so on. So this is very much the point, to try and make sure that all the sports are around the table, and that there's no competition with climate change and sustainability. We all need to row in the same direction if we want to have just a chance to get to the 2030 challenge. And unfortunately, we know by the latest IPCC report that we're not on track. So we need to even make greater efforts to get there.
Sure. Yeah, there's clearly lots to be done, and sport has a huge role to play in that awareness piece and I suppose best practice. One thing I wanted to touch on, which is as sustainability becomes a critical aspect of all business now, environmental, societal, governance, investment priorities are very quickly coming up the agenda. What sort of external pressures do you think come onto sport from partners, from fans, from other stakeholders to improve their sustainability approach? I mean, Formula E and the Ocean Race, two organisations that are doing fantastic things, but I do think of things like the Olympic Games, which is a brilliant celebration of sport, but has a huge impact in terms of carbon emissions and a whole host of other issues if you put it into that context. And I wonder, as we continue to try and address these challenges, how much pressure will come onto organisations to do more or change their way of operating to try and address that, and whether commercial brands and partners might even, through an ESG lens, look at events in terms of their impact on the environment and make some decisions on that basis. And I wonder if that's something that you've come across with the organisations you've been working with, Anne-Cécile.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think the Olympics are doing a lot of work and a lot of good work, not only at the IOC level, but at each at country level as well. And at the game level, and they have certainly grabbed the fantastic opportunity to go further than just putting the house in order. So, hats off with all the work that is being done there. But for me, that's a good sign that it's getting into the commercial world as well, and that most of our partners are now asking for our sustainability credentials, and not even that, but also understanding that we can be a platform to deliver and amplify the impact. So sometimes, we have, for example, launched an education program that is educating and inspiring youth from 6 to 12, and now touching the secondary level as well, and an adult program to train and engage this generation of the future. And for the brands or the partners, that's not what they are about, but they're very interested in supporting us in the initiative of inspirational programs for youth to actually deliver what needs to be delivered so that we all together can influence change. And for sure, the generations of the future will be the ones who have to put the new house in order. Mm-hmm. So commercially, it makes a lot of sense to join organizations like ours that can not only help them to build the credibility, and transfer brand values, not only for the sports values, but also sustainability values, but also amplify it, with the global media. So it's an accelerator, and that's key.
Sure. Julia, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, very aligned with Anne-Cécile. I think we are kind of like really experiencing the same things. I was thinking when you were asking the question, I think really kind of like sports are being kind of like, let's say, requested to have sustainability at the core from kind of like bottom to top. Certainly the ESG movement is something that is pushing from the top, from the investors, from the partners and so on. The sustainability credential and requirement, but also fans. If we look at the next generation of fans, Gen Z, they are really kind of like wanting to have everything and make no compromise, which is great. This is what we should be really proud of. But they want a product, a sport product that is exciting, sustainable, unpredictable, and so on. And they're not going to be ready to compromise, and they're not going to to follow a sport that is not good for. That is not good for the planet. So I'm seeing within kind of like the Formula E ecosystem certainly the same trend, that the partners are coming to us and wanting to understand better our sustainability credentials, but also very much using us as a platform to achieve their own sustainability KPIs at organizational level. What is very interesting is I've been dragged into conversation with chief strategy officers of big companies, big global companies, so that they understand how we can be a platform and again a beacon for their own sustainability goals and achievements, but like very proactively. So this is where it gets really, really interesting, because everyone is starting to link up and use everyone's expertise to progress. And I think very much kind of like this sense of progression and kind of like developing sustainability in terms of delivering is fundamentally a very good sign.
Yeah, I think that raises a really interesting or powerful opportunity for platforms such as yourselves, is that actually you can play a really powerful role with big organizations to help them move their sustainability agenda forward through just the visibility and the reach of the organization. And is that part of your sort of strategy as you progress, is to really integrate more with these organizations and try and take them on that sort of transformational journey?
Absolutely. One of the key objectives, which again echoes to the creating value through values, that is, one of our key pillars, is certainly this, trying to understand really kind of like our mutual sustainability objectives, but also what matters to them that is not necessarily in our direct scope and control, but that is an opportunity to kind of like to grow, or also to experiment some things that would be probably normally a bit out of our scope, but because that's meaningful to them, that's interesting to us. And very much, I'm going to give a very concrete example. We are working with our logistic partners at the moment on a sustainability freight roadmap. As you were mentioning in the beginning, for most of the global sports, freight is the number one contributor to the footprint. And what we're doing here with this logistic partner, and I can name DHL. This is public knowledge. DHL is obviously having kind of like a very clear roadmap, 2030 vision to cut down their emission. And they have obviously kind of like innovative capabilities to test new products, new services. And what we're doing is that we are kind of like plugging our two very kind of like bold ambitions to deliver kind of like a state-of-the-art freight approach that is very much taking into account sustainability.
Yeah. And Cécile, perhaps just following on from that, are there any of your partners that you're working with that you can highlight where they've really used the ocean race to help drive their sustainability strategy?
There are several, in fact. If we think about that, I mean, it's interesting with Julia's example, because our logistics partner as well, JC Pinda, has, I think, also publicly recognized that we've inspired them into the journey, and they've reassessed the way they're gonna deliver our events, taking into account all the sustainability initiatives. We had a partnership with Musto. You were mentioning the Musto brand about their packaging, and we also used our influence to help them along the way to reduce their single-use plastic usage, and the impact. And now we are working with Helly Hansen in the merchandise range as well. So I think it's really about collaboration and using the ocean race as a somehow sustainable living lab, and the host cities as well. Now that we have sustainability integrated in all our contracts, it's a lot easier for us to implement this, because we have a point of contact at each host city, and they're very keen, to use our events as a platform for showcasing sustainable innovation. And we've also, I think, one other thing I wanted to mention is that we've managed to change the rules of the game in order to integrate sustainability. So now the boats will power renewable energy, will be powered by renewable energy as much as we can, at least 20%. And also we are putting science device on board to contribute to the understanding of our playground and measure ocean data, so that we contribute to the big sciences database and policymakers to accelerate change even further. So I think it's going in every direction, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be involved with the ocean race, or the Volvo ocean race as it was, not as a competitor, as you can probably tell, but from a commercial standpoint, and amazing the amount of scientific information and data that is accrued by the boats as they circumnavigate the world, which obviously plays a huge role in shaping some of the decisions and policies there, which is phenomenal. We've got a few questions coming through, so I might just pose a couple of questions here. From your experiences, this is a question from Ziga. From your experiences, what are the most impactful actions at your events that have created the biggest change towards sustainable behavior in fans and participants? Julia, perhaps you can have a first go at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been focusing especially on fun and the fan experience journey on our events, beyond using our platforms through social media and raising awareness, but really on our events. I mean, we've been very much looking at the booth and the exhibition stands in terms of, again, their own credentials, how are they built, making sure that they are all reusable or recyclable, the type of content that is being used, in terms of what they're putting forward to the fan, in terms of what they're going to be learning, what they're going to be hearing about. Same also from food and beverage perspective, we've been putting in place a very thorough food policy where the fan is not gonna have any single-use plastic on its journey. There are water pouches and reusable water pouches and hydration stations. There are vegetarian option in all the stands and so on. So we've been trying to give a bit of a taste of what a sustainable lifestyle can look like in the in the fun journey.
Brilliant. Anne-Cécile, anything from your side in terms of things that you feel have made a significant impact on people's daily lives?
Yeah, I think the accumulation of all the actions, from the message that were on the boat. I'm talking from last time, but this time it's going to be even further. The Turn the Tide on Plastic was a great call to action, and it was visible on all the booms, to the freshwater fountains, allowing us to reduce by 400,000 the number of plastic bottles, to our education program, touching 140,000 kids in more than 40 countries. And then on site, it was like a living and breathing sustainability. Not all the time, not always. There are a lot of steps to take, but it was really an inspiration. And as an example, the Itajaí came, which is our Brazilian stopover, came back to us to say the ocean race and the Volvo Ocean Race at the time has changed the city and the citizens forever. Because after our Ocean Race summits and our passage, they have initiated a series of actions, invested in a new waste management, in improvement in the waste management facility, engaged 10 cities, touching more than 600,000 people in waste management initiatives, created a week long of projects and ideas to support citizen-based initiatives. So it was like the legacy we're leaving, that's so important for us. It's very key. We just don't want to go in and out. We want to get in and share the knowledge as much as we can to all the local stakeholders as well. And that is real valuable impact for a long time.
That's pretty amazing. I think when you've been a catalyst for that sort of degree of change. And I was fortunate enough, I went to the stopover in Hong Kong, where I was based for many years, and I think it was the first event village I'd ever been to where all of the F&B setup was all sustainably sourced. It was wooden utensils, all the, it was brilliant. And the Blue Water as a partner who were providing, there was no plastic bottles. And that sort of makes a lot of sense for people around sailing, particularly, I think, which has incredibly strong sailing, sustainability credentials. But you still have to deliver on that. I mean, Anna-Cecilia, you touched on a little bit on education there, particularly with school children, and I think that's absolutely fundamental to this whole process. Maybe could you just talk a little bit about that from an Ocean Race standpoint? How that program works within the organisation?
Yeah, and for us, it's a key element and key pillar of our sustainability program, which is now called Racing with Purpose as a whole. And the education program, we are now calling it Learning Program, because it's not only about the kids. There are three components, one for primary schools, so for kids from 6 to 12, the second one being developed for secondary schools, and we have a new adult program as well called On Course. And the idea here is really, we've created a program that is free to use. It's being translated in all the languages of the race, so it's 6 or 7 languages, up to 10 languages. And there are elements for teachers, there are elements for the kids, and they can use that at school, and we're also delivering physical workshops on the event. And on top of this, we also have a collaboration with World Sailing, where we've created an additional education program for World Sailing and all the national sailing federations worldwide. It's being translated in 15 languages as we speak. And here I saw the value of collaborating with them to actually get into the into the world of sailing schools, because sometimes you have too much wind or not enough wind, and there are some free moments, during the sailing schools when you're learning how to sail, and they can use these moments to, educate the kids around how they can protect their playground, and it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, brilliant. And Julia, what is Formula E doing in that space? I'm sure you have an education program as part of your strategy.
Yes, absolutely. So we've been also very much working on kind of like education. The first thing that we do is, again, going back to our DNA, because we race in cities, we are always welcoming schools to our events the day before the race, to give them access to the event, gives them access to kind of like the thrill of meeting the teams and the drivers, but also educate them on really what Formula E is all about, and much more than the cars being on the track, how this is going to be changing the mobility in their cities. And then we've been developing some education programs, some kind of like small modules where, children are basically able to learn about sustainability, renewable energy, mobility, and so on in general, that they can take, virtually. We've adapted also to COVID times, and and basically this is kind of like a sort of like taster introduction to these. So we have kind of like a sort of a different level of engaging with schools. The last level is discussing with university students. What we do is that we most of the time take on the opportunity of having our teams, engineers, team principals, and drivers, to bring them in the universities of the cities that are hosting us, and to give them kind of like an inspirational speech on really kind of like what is it that Formula is trying to achieve when they are kind of like in front of engineers, trying to focus on the technology and really how the platform is going to be able to really push for an EV uptake. And then kind of like from a team principal perspective, which is the highest person in command in a Formula E team, talking to the managers of tomorrow on how, you can utilize this very much as something that is going to be kind of like changing your career, attracting more sponsors and partners and so on.
Brilliant, thank you. We're heading towards the end of the session, but I always like to try and be sort of forward-looking and do a little bit of future gazing. And I'm particularly interested in, the last year has been extraordinarily difficult for sport and almost every industry, and there's been a lot of adaptations and evolutions and things. People have had to do things very differently, and I'm wondering whether there's anything that you've had to implement over the last year from a sustainability standpoint, or perhaps something which has had an obvious impact, positive impact on sustainability. And I think that the one which everyone would say is, well, we don't fly around the world for meetings anymore, we do it on Zoom, and that I think is something that will remain. But are there other ways you've had to adapt in terms of whether that's around the media production, whether that's around your operations, whether it's around commercially, that you think, well, we'll probably keep that, we'll keep doing that because it's had a positive impact on what we're doing? I'm just wondering whether, from all of these challenges we've had in the last year, there's some positive changes that you were able to take forward. And Cecilia, I'm going to ask you first. Now, I appreciate it's slightly different because you haven't had to put an ocean race on over the last year, but are there things that you've thought, right, well, new technologies or new ways of working that we actually want to stick with as we move into the future?
Yeah, so we have because of COVID, I was about to say thanks to COVID, no, I don't want to say that. Because of COVID, we had to postpone the race by 1 year. And it gave us the opportunity to create an additional event, the Ocean Race Europe, that will happen in June this year. And of course, we are operating in a complete new way, operating under bubbles, of people to be able to deliver the race. But I think worldwide, it has helped us to pause the speed of life that we had, and allow us to think twice about everything in the way we operate. Not only at the Ocean Race, but because we already were, on this journey, but I feel that now we have a different perspective, and sometimes I have ups and downs, sometimes I'm quite pessimistic, but today I think, in a way, the world has understood that change is possible at the very deep way, and looking at our organization with a different type of perspective, they are allowing us to hope that if you rethink the way you operate, like for example our events, before we were flying people all over the place to deliver the Ocean Race Summit Series, and then we thought it doesn't make any sense, so we reorganized the whole series by focusing 80% at least on local audience attendance, flying only international experts where we had the intention, and that was pre-COVID, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then transferring the event virtually allowed us to go from 300 people physical attendance to more than 700 people virtual attendance from all over the world, sharing content, experience, practice, and it allowed us to actually go even higher in the influence. So that's one of the positive. And then now we are designing the event with sustainability thinking. So that's completely changing the game, really.
Yeah, brilliant. Giulio, how about yourself and Formula E and extremely?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, obviously, kind of like COVID has been kind of like both a very big challenge and also a great opportunity. A very big challenge in the sense that, I mean, most of our races last year had to be postponed, and we had to find a way to finalize the season in one go, 6 races in a row over 9 days in Berlin. But certainly, I mean, this has pushed us to rethink completely, I mean, the way we are operating. And certainly, again, I mean, very much seeing that this is actually possible to stop flying around the world for, I mean, delivering the event. A lot of people have been working remotely, while the core team, the key operational team was in Berlin. Rethinking also the way we approach, for example, media and broadcasts. I know that, I mean, our broadcast and IT director have been doing an amazing job across, I mean, in between the seasons to make sure that this is going to be completely remote from this season onwards, and making sure that we are basically saving a lot of people traveling, but also a lot of people material moving around and so on. So, I mean, this has opened certainly new doors, and I think that this is humanity. And in the beginning, when you're comfortable in the way you approach things, this is a challenge. But then you actually kind of like, once you're doing it and you find, I mean, the new approach, you see this really as kind of like a new opportunity and maybe a better way of doing it than before. And I would say that last but not least, what we've seen is a tremendous support from our teams and our partners that have, again, kind of like really recentered and refocused their probably kind of like their attention and probably kind of like their core will to be with us for the sustainability program and strategy that we have, because for them, they've understood that even if we can't actually deliver the events as initially planned, there's probably more value in what we can do to support them on sustainability sometimes than the event themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much to you both. It's been a really fascinating 40 minutes. I've been lucky, as I said, to go to both ocean race events and Formula E races, and it's extraordinary to see sport playing such a powerful role in driving this agenda forward. Julia, I wish you all the very best for the remainder of the season, which got off to a brilliant start in Saudi. And Cecile, looking forward to the Ocean Race Europe when that happens, and the next big circumnavigation. So thank you very much both for your time. Thanks everybody for joining. If you have any other follow-up questions that you'd like to put to our guest, please do send them across to me and I can get back to you. But I wish everybody a good weekend, and many thanks indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Pleasure. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.